Ja, hallo und guten Morgen hier in der Diving Session am zweiten Tag der DSME. Liebe Zuhörerinnen und Zuhörer, ich hoffe, Sie hatten einen guten Start in diesen Tag, konnten vielleicht schon die Eröffnungsrede und Preisverleihung heute früh und auch die ersten Keynotes ja, genießen und Informationen für sich mitnehmen. Mein Name ist Frank Brehr. Ich begrüße Sie heute zum 6. Vortrag hier in der Diving Session. Wir haben zu Gast Todd Helenius. Er ist Head of IT von der Firma Getzner Werkstoffe in Österreich. Das ist ein Vortrag, der in Englisch sein wird, mit dem Titel The Role of Service Management in a Company and Within the Ongoing Business Digitalization. Und ich darf Ihnen zunächst den Redner vorstellen. Die Anmoderation ist in Deutsch, der Vortrag, wie gesagt, in Englisch. Todd Helenius ist seit 38 Jahren im Berufsleben und hat dieses als Verfahrensingenieur in der Chemie begonnen. Seine internationale Erfahrung sammelte er in Unternehmen wie Sadolin, Akzo, Nobel, Merck und nun bei Getzner Werkstoffe in Österreich. Er war 13 Jahre im Bereich Sales und Marketing tätig, bevor er dann diverse IT-Positionen wie Business Unit Information Manager, Head of Corporate IT Governance oder Head of IT übernahm. Die Internationalität seiner Arbeitgeber hat den gebürtigen Finnen bereits nach Schweden, die Niederlande, Deutschland und jetzt zuletzt nach Österreich verschlagen. Im nun folgenden Vortrag hören Sie, warum es in der IT darum geht, dem Unternehmen hervorragende Leistungen zu ermöglichen und dass die IT-Toolbox aus Dienstleistungen besteht. Sie haben während des Vortrags die Möglichkeit, über das Fragefenster natürlich Fragen an Todd Helenius zu senden, die wir dann am Ende des Vortrags in einer Q&A-Session gerne noch beantworten. Leider kann er in der Speakers Corner im Anschluss nicht verfügbar sein. Deswegen, wenn Sie Fragen haben, bitte gerne direkt stellen. Ansonsten steht auch der Vortrag von Todd Helenius im Nachgang zur Verfügung und kann heruntergeladen werden. Dort werden Sie auch seine direkten Kontaktdaten dann finden und dürfen sehr gerne natürlich auch für einen engeren Austausch mit ihm Kontakt aufnehmen. Todd, I will hand over now the moderation rights to you and it's your stage.
Thank you. You should by now see my picture, and hopefully in a second you will see the presentation as well.
Perfect. Presentation is there.
Okay, very good. What I'm going to do today is not basically, I'm not going to try to teach anybody how to do business digitalization and service management. What I'm trying to do here today is to trigger some thoughts and maybe trigger a different way of looking at business digitalization and the role of service management in the whole situation. But first, a short introduction of Getzner. So who are we? We are a company in Austria. We are about 500 people, and we are producing polyurethane materials. So our materials, you never notice them, and that is good because it's about reducing vibrations and reducing sound as much as possible. So if you are sitting in a train, you might be sitting more or less on our materials and on two levels. They are under the tracks, and they might also reduce vibration, and they might reduce sound in the train that you are sitting in. When you are driving across a bridge, you might be driving on our material. When you are switching on your air conditioning at home, if you have a small air conditioning unit, it might be made vibration free, and it might be more silent by our materials. So the question is, where are we? So our main production unit is located in Austria, in Bürs, and we have another production unit in China, and we have 9 sales offices across the world. You can see the map here. So we are a relatively small company, but we are already pretty complex due to distributed manufacturing and sales offices all over the place. Our sales offices are selling materials, but they are also advising and guiding our customers to pick the right materials and the right solutions. So our slogan is basically engineering a quiet future. This is what we are all about. So I go to the topic directly, and that is, first we need to figure out what are we talking about? What do we mean by digital business? What is it? Is it a web shop? Creation of digital products replacing physical products, disruptive digitalization, Internet of Things, Industry 4.0. What are we really talking about here? And in fact, I think it's all of that. Now, in order to bring a little bit of clarity into the room, I have tried to make a definition myself, and here I'm on deep water, because all the gardeners and foresters and who have you, they have their own definitions as well. But for me, I have tried to boil it down to something that you can touch, something that you can really work with. So the first thing is, it's about services. It's about digital services. It is about end-to-end services. And it is not about IT, and it is not about business. It is a combination of these two. It is about minimizing human intervention as much as possible. And one of the crucial points is about autonomous decision-making. So decisions made in a process by systems based on data, based on input coming from customers, from suppliers, from production machinery, and what have you. And these, it could be algorithm-based, or it could be AI-based. It is actually indifferent. It's not important how decisions are made, but what is important is that the process and the system is able to make autonomous decisions. And in order to support decision making, you need to have pretty advanced analytics underneath, so that the system is actually then making the right decisions. When we look at services, then what do I mean by a service? A service, traditionally an IT service, is about bringing various service components together, doing a service integration, so that the thing works end to end, and then we provide this service to a business consumer, normally inside the company. This is the traditional IT service model. Now, if you are at maturity X+1, you might have already included business service components into your service. And the service integration then is going across IT components and business service components. One difference between business and IT service components is normally that the IT service components are almost all of them already digital, while the business service components are usually conducted or taken care of by human beings. If you are already, if your company, if your business has already, if you're already at this maturity level where you actually have brought these things together, IT and business, you are doing this, the service integration across the whole chain, and you have good account management providing the service to an end consumer. you are actually pretty far. A lot of companies are talking about this. I mean, this is a little bit like teenage sex. Everyone is talking about it, and everyone is pretending to do it. But in the end, very few are actually doing it. So if we then look at how do we create and how do we digitalize our business, what we normally do is we use the normal IT project management methodology. We define the thing, we initiate it, we plan it, we create a blueprint, we prototype it, we implement it, we do quality assurance, and we go live. If we are talking about digital business and business digitalization, we basically first need to identify the analog process. We go in and we define the input and output. We need to look a little bit at authorizations and identity management. How do we govern the whole thing? Then we need also, of course, to define the to-be process, because otherwise we don't know what we are actually going to try to create. We need, of course, in some cases we might need additional technology, new technology. So we need to identify that. Then we prototype the whole thing. Then we blueprint it. Then we implement it. Then we quality assure it, and then we go live. And then we have done kind of our IT business digitalization. However, could it be differently? Could it be done differently? So if you look carefully at the picture, it looks kind of the same, but when you look a little bit more carefully, you see that this buggy is actually going in the different direction. And this is a little bit what I'm suggesting here also. We need to think differently, because you are making a big change when you digitalize your business. You're actually, you have no choice. You need to bring together business and IT really intimately to work together. And that is, in many companies, this is already a cultural shock. There are a number of things you need to take into consideration here. The first thing is that the world outside is changing. When we build a digital business process, which goes through IT across the business and landing at one of our customers, partners, what have you, you can't cast this thing in stone. It is going to change. It is going to change most probably relatively quickly, because the outside world is changing. So whatever we build, it need to have the capability, it need to have the characteristics, flexibility, it need to be elastic, because what we design today will be different tomorrow. Security. Cybersecurity is a very different animal compared to IT security. Cyber threats come from a different angle. They have a different vector compared to IT threats. Now, IT, we are all used to protecting ourselves against IT threats. Many of us are still we still have a perimeter defense in place. When we digitalize our business, we are opening up our company. We are tearing down part of our perimeter defense. We need to replace it with something. We need to have a different defense mechanism. We need to defend our data. We need to defend, of course, perimeter defense stays, and it is part of our defense mechanism. but we also need to look at the threats that are there when we start sharing data, when we open up our systems to be accessed, and our systems will start interacting with external systems. It's a different ballgame. So this we need to look at very carefully. The digital operating model is fundamentally different from a standard business IT operating model. We need to make we need to ensure that the operating model is as lean as possible, because here we are again talking about business and IT interaction. It is one combined operating model. We need to keep it lean and mean. We need to keep it as flexible as possible, and we need to ensure that it is also reusable. We might have to change interfaces. We need to be able to adapt communication patterns depending on the customers we are working with. One big thing here is, of course, reusability. We need to keep the whole thing as reusable as possible. Digital architecture, the famous KISS model, keep it simple, stupid. Try to reuse as many of the service components as possible, because that keeps the cost down. And it is not only the IT components. We also need to define business components that are as reusable as possible. The last part is probably the most tricky one, and that is talent and skills. What do we do actually when we digitalize our business processes, when we create digital services? The business, the IT components, they are already, I mean, we are talking about systems, we are talking about SAP, we are talking about CRM, we are talking about all sorts of technical components, data acquisition, what have you. All these things, they are more or less digital already. When we start talking about digitalizing the business components, they are most of the time conducted by human beings. So here we are talking about a different ballgame. We are talking about kind of replacing human intervention, human interaction in the business processes with digital components. Now, this means that human intervention, this means that human decision making is going to move out of the process. That doesn't mean that we need to get rid of the people. We need to place the people better in the process where they add more value to the business process. And that is, of course, in the area of governance. It is in the area of business process development. It is in managing the business process and business service life cycle. And it is very much about interacting with our customers, with our partners, with the end users. And in order to do so, we are to a certain extent going away from traditional skills. We need a different skill set. We need a different talent set here, because it's about, again, it's about combining IT and it's about with the business. We need to merge those two things. We need to bring them together. And it is today difficult to find IT people with deep business skills. And it is equally difficult to find business people with deep IT skills. So at the highest level, at the governance level, at the innovation level, we need to find the right people, the right skill sets, the right talents to bring those two worlds together. And that is the tricky part. Now, someone would maybe argue that if you are not in control of these 5 basic things, you should consider twice how much and how deep you want to go with digitalizing your business. However, over time, I don't think there is I don't think there is an option. If you are not ready and if you are not capable of doing business on the terms and conditions stated by the market, you might become irrelevant, and we don't want that to happen. So, having said that, this is basically the picture you want to digitalize. This is where you have the business service. This is where you have the IT components. This is where you have the business components. You have account management to the end customer, and you have some sort of service desk, maybe with two different focuses, one on the IT side and one on the business side. But the front end, of course, to the end user will be the business service desk. So what does that mean? Digitalizing the whole thing basically means a traditional process that we have. We have business activities and we have IT system activities. Business activities are normally done and conducted by human beings. They are intervening in the process. They are doing things. They are making decisions. They are ordering raw materials. They are maybe receiving orders. They are maybe placing and planning production orders. They are maybe sending confirmations, order confirmations to customers. They are sending out invoices, all these things. When we digitalize the process, we want basically to go as far as possible, and we want to automate those things. We want the system to take care of it. This, again, what I said about skills and talents on the slide before, I mean, this is the big change we have here. We are trying to get the human intervention out of the processes, and we want to replace that with autonomous, more or less autonomous processes where decisions are made by the process. This is, of course, a challenge. In the end, it means we want to have one process. We have one fully integrated end-to-end process. It contains the IT components and the business components. The service integration is done by a combined team. What we have is really minimized human intervention. So I have put the human beings here from our side, from our business side up here, and where they really add value in a future digitalized process, it is interacting with the end consumer. It is also giving feedback into the process about improvements, changes, errors, bugs, what have you. And of course, we need to receive feedback as well from the end customer and end customer systems into the process. Based on all this, the process will make more or less autonomous decisions. And in order to support and enable decision making, we need to have the analytics there. So what does it mean? If you have if you are at maturity level X plus 1, you are in a very, very good position to start digitalizing your services, because you have already analog processes. You need to go through those 5 core enablers, security, and what have you. You need to involve the end customer from the beginning. So building a service, putting it on the market, very few companies are in a position where we basically can dictate what the way our customers would need to interact with us. Very few companies are in a position that we can dictate those conditions. So this means we need to involve our customers from the beginning, from our partners, customers, end consumers, what have you. We need to redefine, most probably, we need to redefine the digital value proposition. And we need to do it together with the customer, because the way we are going to interact, we need different things from the customer. The customer will probably need services around the service. So if the whole thing is about delivering a product to our customer, maybe just in time. Previously, it was taken care, just in time was taken care of by human intervention. Now, our systems need to be connected in such a way that the information is still provided, and the systems can then make more or less autonomous interaction with each other. So it is not about one-way street. It is really about, is it a 2-lane or 4-lane autobahn? I mean, it is really about a highway with information in both directions. It's about removing human interaction as much as possible. This means that all processes, all services are not suitable to be digitalized, at least not yet. It also has to do with customer requirements. If the customer is demanding human intervention, then who are we to deny him that? So every process is not at the level, every service is not at the level that we actually can digitalize it. So here we need to make smart choices. We need to refocus human interaction. I talked a little bit about that already. It is about moving human beings, human interaction out of the process and more towards where they add value, and that is in governance. That is in agreements. It is interaction with customers and end consumers. If we are in control of our service components, the vertical service components that go into the service, we will realize that some of those need to be rebuilt. They will need to be refocused. We probably need other technology, and we need to find ways to replace human interaction with technology, with decision making. We also need to focus on data, because we will need more data, we will need different data, and we will need probably different data streams. We also need to look at decision-making methodologies. How are we going to make the decisions? Because in most processes, there are points in time where we need to decide to go left or right, to decide about volumes to decide about many decisions. If we are in control and if we are using our kind of service structure, if we have a good designed, well-designed service structure, we might be able to replace the human components one by one. So we don't need to go in there and digitalize the whole thing at once and go live with a completely new process. We might actually be able to replace some of the components step by step and not do the whole thing in one shot. And this is, I think, one of the areas where service management and traditional service management comes into the picture and where it will show itself very, very valuable. If we have good answers and if we have solved the topics on this slide very well, it could also be that we go back to slide number 4, basically the traditional IT project implementation model, and we do the whole thing with a big bang. That is also, that might in the end, if we are really well prepared and if we can take the risk of going from A to B in one shot, it might be the most cost efficient and it might be in some cases the best solution. So when we talk about services, there is a little bit of a checklist that we can use to see where do we stand, where are we? And the first question is, do we have defined end-to-end services in place? Do we really understand what our service is? Do we understand how it is composed? Do we understand the input? Do we understand the output? And do we understand the requirements of the consumers of the service? Are we so far that we have SLAs in place? Do we have service lifecycle management in place? Do we actually manage the service end to end and over its lifetime? Is service ownership defined? Do we have a service owner? That question should actually come before service lifecycle management, because the first step is, of course, to have a service owner defined. Do we have a good overview over the service components? Are we managing the technology components? Are we managing already the business components? The chance is much bigger that we already have service management in place, traditional service management in place for the IT components. On the business side, it is more rare, let's put it like that. Do we have OLAs in place between the service components and the service? And do we have the right and suitable decision-making algorithms in place? If we have all these things in place, if we at some maturity level, we are very, very well positioned to digitalize our services. Now, does that mean that if we don't have positive answers basically to these checklist questions, does that mean that we are not capable of digitalizing our business? Not at all. Not at all. Of course, we can go on and digitalize business. We can come up with completely new processes. We might even go to the outside world and buy already a digitalized process, and we implement it in our business, and we can do that very successfully. However, when going this direction, there is a risk, of course, that we are building a very complex landscape. If we have a simple business, that is no problem. But if we have a more complex business, if we have a manufacturing business, if we have a business with several business groups, customer groups, if we are operating in several markets, if we are internationally present, our business model might already be pretty complex, and adding a layer of standalone services might even further make our life more complex, more expensive, more rigid, and the fact that we cannot reuse some of the activities, some of the components, might also bring up the complexity and the cost.
Tord, another 9 minutes.
Okay, so this is actually very good, because this was my last content slide, and my next slide is actually about questions. Are there questions? Are there comments? I'm happy to be basically beaten up now.
So, Tord, thank you very much for this interesting presentation. And we definitely got in during the presentation the first question, but I want to ask the participants to send in questions if they have. We still have the time to answer them directly. But I will start with the first question which came in. And the participant write down, you said the trick part of is to find people with deep business knowledge and strong IT skills. In the case a person already has strong business skills and already started to be familiar with IT as office user SAP and started to learn Python or other programming language, what steps do you think this person should take in order to have a stronger IT skills? It means what should the person learn, or what IT skills are needed in order to become the joker, you said?
So if you have the business skills, if you are on the business side, you have seen a customer, you are successful in bringing the service to the customer, and the customer is also using the service and generating money for the company. The next step from there is not so much about IT. I think it is very much about understanding the processes. So how is the process running? The third step is to understand how is the process supported by systems and system tools. And I think it goes basically from the top down. It starts with business, it goes to process, it goes to systems, and deeper than that, any business person, let's say, who is working on the top end, on the front end of digitalization, should not even go deeper than that. But of course, it is important to understand what functionality is there. Where is the data coming from? How are the systems interconnected? How are they interfaced? And this is what I mean with IT skills. It is not about programming. It is not so much about traditional IT skills. It's not about servers. That IT will take care of. The skills and kind of IT skills that are needed are at the front end. It is to understanding the customer, it is to understand the process, and it is to understand how the systems are supporting the business process. Okay. I hope that a little bit answered the question.
Yeah, thank you for this explanation. Yeah, I hope too that this answers the question, but I guess. So the last question, are there any further questions from the participants? Currently, there is nothing coming in. If this is the case, we saved some time for letting take the participants maybe the next cup of coffee, and I will change to German now, and Tord, once again that you shared your thinking about the role of service management. Once again, thank you. Und für Sie, liebe Teilnehmer, natürlich auch herzlichen Dank, dass Sie hier in der sechsten Session, in der Session Diving teilgenommen haben. Ich möchte Ihnen Als nächstes unseren nächsten Keynote mit einem sehr bekannten FIFA-Schiedsrichter, nämlich Urs Meier, der ja mittlerweile auch im Keynote-Speaker-Bereich unterwegs ist. Er wird um 11:45 Uhr starten. Und wenn Sie auf dem Weg dahin sind, durch die Lobby, nutzen Sie vielleicht die Chance, heute noch eine PlayStation 5, eine brandneue PlayStation 5 zu gewinnen. Ist ganz einfach. Sie gehen an unserer virtuellen Fotobox vorbei, nehmen ein Foto von sich auf, pinnen das bitte an die Pinnwand und dann haben Sie die Chance, wenn Sie heute Abend um 17:45 Uhr Ihr Bild in der Kamera sehen, dass Sie diese PlayStation gewonnen haben. Darüber hinaus gibt es noch den virtuellen, Wünsche-Christbaum, wo Sie vielleicht auch mal Ihre Gedanken und Wünsche für das kommende Jahr 2021 anpinnen können. Und last but not least, bis morgen Mittag um 14 Uhr oder kurz vor 14 Uhr haben Sie die Chance, an der Ausstellerrallye teilzunehmen. Sie müssen auf 17 Ständen 17 Buchstaben finden, diese in die richtige Reihenfolge bringen und dann können Sie auf alle Fälle auch einen der 3 sehr interessanten Preise gewinnen. Wie gesagt, nehmen Sie sich die Zeit, schauen Sie dort vorbei, nutzen Sie die Gimmicks und dann würde ich sagen, ich kündige schon mal hier in der Diving Session den nächsten Vortrag an. Der wird um 13 Uhr sein. Es wird zu Ihnen sprechen Timo König von der BWI GmbH mit dem Vortragstitel Coworking Model, agiles Arbeiten im Spannungsfeld Linien- und Projektorganisation. Wir hören uns später. Bis dahin noch viel Spaß auf dem DSME.